two, one, two, three.
Hello and welcome to Ithaca DSA Presents. I'm Theresa Alt. I'm here today with Pete Meyers. He's coordinator of the Tompkins County Workers Center. He's well positioned to know what's going on in the various labor unions in this area. In fact, the Workers Center held a press conference on March 19th to let 6 bargaining units from four unions talk about what's going on. For technical reasons, I can't just play a recording, but also a recording would no longer be accurate because at least 2 of those unions have had major news in the 10 days or so since then. So it's important that I say up front that we are recording this on April 9th, 2025, to air on radio 2 days later and on cable television later than that. After all, more things may change any day now. So, Pete Meyers, tell us what those bargaining units are.
Yeah, so one of them is Ithaca Teachers Association, which is the union for all the teachers within the Ithaca City School District. Another one is Cornell Graduate Students United. Another one is the Bangs Ambulance Workers United Union. GreenStar Workers United, Union for the GreenStar Workers. The Tompkins County Public Library Workers. The Tompkins Consolidated Area Transit Drivers and Workers, otherwise known as TCAT. And there's a couple others if we have time to talk about, but these ones that I just listed are the ones that have there's been action in the last month or so.
So let's focus now on the Ithaca Teachers Association, also known as ITA. Tell us about what's happening there.
Yeah, so the union, Ithaca Teachers Association, held a rally 2 weeks ago in part to push for the district to adopt widely employed system of setting teacher salaries, where teachers with similar qualifications and time worked in the district earn the same salary base. And then actually a rally earlier in March, the ITA president, Catherine Cernera, said that the district teachers are currently under a patchwork of different salary schedules depending on when they were hired. For example, there were some cases in which more experienced teachers are making less than a fresh hire because they were hired under a less favorable contract. And it contributes to wage compression and higher teacher turnover. So that's a prime focus of the union right now in negotiations with the school districts.
Yes, I know. I've also been in contact. A good friend of mine is actually secretary of that union. And they are very concerned about over high turnover. And they say they've talked to the people who leave, and it is about what they are getting paid.
And it's a real shame because it seems like it's in a relatively, I don't know how wealthy we are compared to other school districts upstate surrounding here, but it feels like they should be making higher wages. It's kind of on the lower end compared to a lot of other school districts upstate, from what I understand.
Yes, and we certainly have some of the highest cost of living.
Yeah. The new living wage being $24.82 just for a single person.
Okay, so they are in negotiations, and we haven't really heard any late breaking news.
Right. Right.
So tell us about the Cornell Graduate Student Union.
Well, first of all, let me just say, from a logistical point of view, CGSU, the Cornell grad students, have been meeting in the Tompkins County Worker Center fairly consistently for the last year and a half. Sometimes like 3 times a week, and then other times like a 2 week gap. So we've really gotten to know them well. A tentative agreement has been reached, however, within the past couple of weeks. A lot of stuff has happened as of very recent. So a tentative agreement has been reached for a 2 year contract 2 weeks ago between the university and CGSU. Um, this agreement includes full dental and visual coverage, free TCAT passes for the bus system, wage increases for grad student workers by close to 8% for the 2025-26 academic year, and a 3% increase for the 26-27 academic year. The agreement also includes amongst the best just cause protections in industry history, that industry history being grad student unions around the country, according to CGSU. And just cause protections ensure that workers can't be disciplined without specific protocols. In other words, you just can't say, Teresa's a teacher's assistant. Teresa, I don't like the way you look today, you're fired. We're going to let you go. That's just cause, which is something that Worker Center is working on at the city level to have all workers have just cause protections.
I was laughing because something very much like that happened to me at Cornell several decades ago. It's
Yeah,
probably one of my life experiences that has made me value the Workers' Center.
well, that's good to hear. People shouldn't, most industrialized countries around the world have some sort of just cause protection for the entire country. In the United States, none of that.
I should add that at that time, I was not a graduate student here. In fact, I had a PhD from a different university, but I was what we now routinely call adjunct.
Okay. And so, and you probably know, these are rough guesstimates, like 30 years ago, 70% of professors were full-time professors and 30% were adjuncts. Now that number is totally switched. It's like 30% of professors are full-time and then 70% are adjunct, which means universities save a lot of money by doing that to workers.
Well, maybe we should say Cornell was a pioneer.
A bad pioneer.
Um, One other interesting thing about CGSU is what union they are affiliated with.
Yes, they're affiliated with UE, which is a national union that's actually is a relatively new field, I believe, for them, for the union UE to be dealing with, but they're really especially focused on grad students at various universities around the country. So that's the union they have.
And it is, I think, one of the most uh, ambitious and radical unions in the country.
Yeah, that's kind of my sense of them as well.
Uh, previous, I know there have been several previous unsuccessful attempts by graduate students to organize, and this is the first time that they've been affiliated with UE. I think they had
Right,
various other affiliations at earlier times.
right. I think it was back in 2017. They were working with the American Federation of Teachers, and it was not successful. I mean, it was almost successful, but barely. And this vote with the present grad students, they actually won with, I think, like 93% of the vote. So that's kind of amazing.
Well, I mean, part of the difference, I think, is their new affiliation, but
Like,
it was actually at, I think, last year's Labor Day picnic that I heard one of their organizers give a talk and suddenly realized it was COVID that made the difference.
oh,
Yes,
okay.
yes.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, the professors took shelter and the graduate students stayed
Right.
and fed the mice and did whatever had to be done.
Wow.
Well, another group of, you might say, even more frontline workers are the ambulance workers. So there's another story.
Yeah. So I actually had a, go ahead.
Oh, I just forgot to ask one thing. You said they had a tentative agreement. Has it been, but it has to be ratified by a vote of the union, and I don't think that happened yet.
Yes, I looked that up last night. There's no evidence that it's happened yet. So,
Well, Cornell was on break for kind of,
right.
so I imagine the vote is happening maybe this week or something. Okay, I'm
Yeah,
not sure.
I'm not sure
Um,
either.
okay. So sorry. So let's get back to Bang's ambulance workers.
Yeah. So, Bangs workers actually came to us around 3 years ago at the Worker Center, wanting our support. And actually, we provided space for them to meet at the Worker Center quite consistently and played a role in their initial thinking of organizing. And they have been for the last 3 years. And I actually had an opportunity to speak to the president of the union last night, Matt Sullivan. And he gave me a really good update. I'll just briefly read this to you. They're still working on negotiating their first contract after 3 years of having certified the election. So it's a little bit ridiculous how management is dragging this out. While the union is frustrated at the slow pace of negotiations and management's resistance to get an agreement over the line, they have gotten several pre-contract victories, including 25 to 30 pay increases, percent pay increases for the workers, and short staffing incentives to kick in when a shift is critically understaffed. Let's say there's a shift from midnight till 6 in the morning. It's if people work those shifts that are hard to get staffed, they get a double pay rate for everyone on the shift. And that's already improved staffing quite significantly, and the workers are quite happy about it. They're hoping to have a final contract agreed upon within the next couple of months. Um, that's pretty much, it's kind of funny. It's like Bang's management appears to be, offering some stuff that would fit with a positive, a successful union contract. They just haven't gotten to that union, the end of the game yet, the end line.
Okay, and what's their affiliation?
They're affiliated with Civil Service Employees of America, which is New York, really a New York based union across the state. It tends to work with government employees. Um, Not always. I mean, Bangs is obviously not a government. So they're stepping out a little bit to work with the EMS workers across upstate, actually.
That's
CSEA is.
that's interesting. Um, well, some other um, another union that had a similarity in the name, so I put it next, the GreenStar Workers United.
Yeah. So I've had a little bit of a inside relationship to this because my brother actually works at GreenStar and was part of the union effort. There's a lot of My observation is that there's a lot of dissatisfaction with workers who work at GreenStar. Um, and they decided to organize a union starting last spring into the summer, and then actually had votes at all three stores, Cascadilla, uh, the DeWitt store in Buffalo Street, and then the Collegetown store. They were timed at a little different times, but roughly 85% of the workers voted in favor of organizing a union at all three stores. And they're still in process of negotiating a contract. There's some frustration that workers are having at the length of the time it's taking for management to deal with a contract. And it's also unfortunate that GreenStar, who has long been a living wage employer, did not keep up with $18.45 an hour living wage. So that's unfortunately, they're no longer a living wage employer.
Well, you said started not so long ago, but I seem to remember attempts to organize a union there several years ago. That failed.
Yes.
And there's been turnover since then, both in in right, unionizable staff
Right.
and in management.
Correct. Correct.
So it's been a very new game, I'm sure.
Right. And they're happy with the union they're working with. It's Workers United, which is the Rochester branch of that. It's called the Rochester Regional Joint Board, but it's Workers United. And they've been very happy with that. The chief organizer with Workers United in Rochester is a guy named Will Westlake, who was also a worker at Gimme Coffee when they organized a union there. So he's been doing a great job with Workers United.
Oh, cool.
And let's just hope for a contract there at GreenStar.
And then there are the Tompkins County Public Library workers. I'm not quite sure that that's the name of their union, but that's who they
So
are.
yeah, so the public library workers are part of a larger union, United Auto Workers 2300, and um, basically within the last year and a half, starting a year and a half ago, we had a number of workers from the library contacting the Worker Center. We have a workers' rights hotline, and we field calls from people with all different professions and actually beyond Tompkins County often as well. But these workers were contacting us, complaining about their work at the library, and especially concerned about the executive director and how the executive director was handling workplace situations. Um, among other things, we encouraged them to get in touch with their union, which they finally did. And eventually, as many people will know, the executive director was terminated very recently. And as I mentioned, many of the workers were unhappy with this executive director.
But I think there too, I seem to remember long ago union affiliation with UAW.
Yeah, they've been affiliated with the non-management workers at the library have been affiliated with the UAW for a long time, I believe.
So it's not so much a new union as maybe a newly aroused union.
Yes, yes, good way to frame it.
And I think well, the news from there is that the director allegedly resigned. There's a new, well, a temporary, what do you call
Interim director.
interim director has
And then interim director was the previous executive director of the library, and she's actually on county legislature, so
no,
she's stepping down from that
yeah,
seat.
yeah. Um, and I guess things were smoother in her day, and
Yeah,
hope,
I mean
yeah.
everybody very much liked Susan Curry.
Okay. Um, and then there are the TCAT workers, Tompkins Consolidated Area Transit.
Which are bus workers, both drivers and workers who kind of make the whole operation happen. Um, there was dissatisfaction with especially how much people were being paid, but also with people having to work ungodly amounts of overtime. Um, it seems like an industry that's hard to recruit people to. Um, I think that's part of the problem, but part of the problem was pay. So after lengthy negotiations, there was a couple of weeks ago, there was an overwhelmingly approved strike authorization vote. Like 84% of the workers across the board who were not management agreed to strike if TCAT didn't come to the table, coming closer to meeting the demands of the workers. And they reached that tentative agreement and made a commitment to maintain uninterrupted service. Among the demands being met was an agreement by TCAT to pay its workers at least the new living wage of $24.82. I don't know if that happened the next day or if it's being phased in. I'm not sure of that detail.
Well, I mean, those are some workers we really depend on, or let's say
Yes.
I do,
Right.
for instance. Um,
Right.
so I was out at a number of rallies supporting them because they are Well, I shouldn't,
th-
I mean,
they're your ride,
yes, yeah, exactly. In many, many cases.
right?
Um, I think I walk more than anything else, but there are some things that are a little too far for walking.
Right, right.
So I think you said there were a couple of other situations that you could address, or maybe they're not situations now, but
Well, just briefly, it was a big situation. Many viewers and listeners will know that last year during the summer and into the fall, United Auto Workers service workers at Cornell, which is a lot. It's like around 1,100, I believe. Basically, were frustrated with a lot of working conditions on campus and how much they were being paid. And there was the Worker Center actually played a big role in driving community support to the pickets that were happening on campus. And eventually, I believe it was in early September. It was actually around the Labor Day picnic last year where the two sides came to an agreement. And so the workers seem, relatively speaking, happier with their contract now with the multinational university, Cornell. Um, Another one I want to just briefly talk about was, did you want to go on about UAW or should I go to the next one?
I think you can go on.
So there's a multinational company all around the world called Borg Warner, which is located in Tompkins County on Warren Road, almost actually across the street from the county jail, very close to the airport, that has been there for a long, long time. And I'm not exactly sure what Borg Warner produces, but it's they decided to move a great portion of their workforce across the border into Mexico, obviously to save money and basically give the workers not a lot of notice about this. So the Teamsters are their union, the Teamsters Local 317 out of Syracuse, and they actually struck this past summer, seeking better working conditions as part of a new collective bargaining agreement. And then the employer decided to sweeten the pot and offer over 200 workers that were in question here. They're being threatened to have their jobs moved in 2 years. Voted 540 to 60 in favor of the new contract because the Borg Warner offered each worker a $5,500 bonus to sign the contract. And that was hard for these workers to turn down. So they agreed to that contract and have their jobs until the jobs are moved south of the border.
Yeah, I believe what they manufacture is certain key automobile parts.
Yes, yes.
Well, thank you, Pete Meyers, coordinator of the Workers' Center, for bringing us up to date about what's going on in unions. And I will repeat the date. Today is April 9th, 2025, and things are changing fast. This has been Ithaca DSA Presents. I'm Theresa Alt. Thanks for watching.
1, 2, 1, 2, 3.